Hello and welcome to my final presentation for professional communications. And so in this presentation, I am going to be discussing what I've learned and things that I was hoping to learn through this interview process that we had as an assignment in this class. So I'm going to talk about information that I was hoping to gain and then the information that I was actually able to obtain through the interview process. And I'm going to talk about some unexpected insights that I gained throughout this process as well. And I will review lessons that I have learned about interviewing. And I'll share some additional insights and recommendations with you guys. So, the first thing is talking about things that I was hoping to learn and that information that I gained, excuse me, as I went through the process. So I had two interviews, one with a physical therapist and one with a software development business owner. And so they were two very different interviews. So it was really interesting to me to get to see those kind of contrasting elements to those interviews. I had originally planned to do two physical therapists, but one of them it didn't end up working out for her schedule and she just couldn't make it happen. So I kind of pivoted last minute and found a new interviewee, and I'm really actually happy with the experience that I was able to gain through that. So the goals that I kind of had going into this was try something new. Put yourself in a new situation, get uncomfortable, and see what you can learn from it, because it's kind of always nerve-wracking going into a new situation of, okay, I don't know these people, but I'm going to ask a favor of them to sit down with me, a college student, that's, not really going to give them any sort of benefit for sitting down and having this interview with us. So it was really great to find those people willing to share about their passion and their jobs to benefit me in my process of figuring out what I want to do. And so trying something new and getting out of my comfort zone was kind of my first goal with this, because it's so easy to stay within our comfort zone. But I really wanted to make this a learning experience and kind of get the most out of it that I could. So I really took that push to be like, okay, we're doing this. We're just going to ask some people that we don't really know, and the worst that can happen is they say no. But luckily, everyone that I had asked ended up saying yes. And so I was able to learn. I was really hoping to learn more about the field of physical therapy, because it's something that I'm very, very passionate about. I want to go into it. And so I wanted to see, is this kind of all it's cracked up to be? So I was able to learn a lot more about that. And then I wanted to learn more about business ownership from my second interviewee. And I had some really good information from him that was pretty unexpected, but I did definitely gain knowledge about what it is like to have your own business, especially a remote business, which was really interesting in kind of 2025 where that is so prevalent. And so some of those things that I learned were really exciting and helped me through this process in the class, and I think provided me with a lot more knowledge than I would have gained if I would have sat down with somebody that I knew really well or someone that I was really familiar with, because then it's easy to just get into just normal conversation. So then we go into our unexpected insights. So something that kind of unexpected that happened for me was that one of my initial interviewees, she ended up canceling on me last minute. And kind of before that, she was kind of like pushing me out. Oh, we can do it this date. Oh, that date's coming around. Actually, I can't do that date. Let's push it out a little farther, until it came down to the last kind of week until I had to have my project done. And I was like, okay, this isn't going to work. I got to pivot. I got to figure out, what do I need to do to make this happen? And so I pivoted a little bit and found someone new to have that interview with. So the flexibility of being like, okay, something is not going according to plan, let me kind of pivot and take my brain down a different track. So it was kind of interesting to feel what it was like to, okay, this isn't going to work, let me go here. So like maybe you had questions set up for an interview with somebody coming for a specific position, and then they come into the interview and you're like, wait, like your qualifications line up way better, and your interests and your skills line up way better with this different position. I think that would be kind of a good comparable example of why it's necessary to stay flexible within our interviewing process. And so it did kind of align with my expectations as we were going through, because I kind of figured it would be easier to talk to people that we know. And so both of these people being people that I had never really met before. The physical therapist I had met maybe once or twice before, but not really like conversation or anything like that. So it was great to see what it was like to just kind of start that process with somebody new. And my two interviews were pretty different. One was we had a lot of great conversation, and it flowed really easily. I felt very comfortable. And my second one was a little bit different because I did not have a lot of knowledge in their career field of software development or software engineering. And so I learned a lot from my second interviewee. And that was, it was expected that, I don't really know this person. I've never met this person before in my life. And so it was interesting to see the difference and listen back to the recording of, oh yeah, like things I could tell went a lot smoother in the first one because number one, it's a field that I'm really familiar with. And I had seen that person face to face before. Second person, I don't know anything about your field, and I've never met you before. So you're kind of gauging like, all right, what do you kind of expect from me with that first intermediate, that first interaction with that person. And so lessons about interviewing, this next section here that I wanted to talk about, I feel like I learned so much. And one of the biggest things that I think I learned is just being prepared. Being prepared is so important. Like, even if you come upon those situations where you need to pivot really quickly, and so that comes into like questions. Like, if you are doing like a specific job interview and you're like, okay, I have this set list of questions, well, maybe that person comes in and they just don't quite fit that mold of those questions. You're going to have to kind of think on your toes and be like, okay, what can I ask you that's going to be prevalent to this job that will give me insight into your skill set and how you would perform in this position. And the dynamics of interviewing. I will say that it definitely feels a lot more comfortable being the interviewer instead of the interviewee. And I'm sure we've all had that anxiety over going to a job interview and just feeling like, oh my gosh, this is a lot. I hope I do good. I hope I make a good first impression. And it was a lot more relaxing going in as the interviewer because you're in solid ground. Like, this is your company, you know your role, you know your responsibilities, you have this great foundation, whereas this person coming in really doesn't know a lot about the company, maybe doesn't know a lot about the position at hand, and so it's definitely a lot more kind of calming to be that person asking the questions instead of the person answering the questions. And so gaining new perspectives on planning, I definitely did. I definitely gained new perspectives on planning and just the importance of we got to do it. There's no getting around it. If we want to have a good interview, we're going to need to be prepared. Just like our presentations. If we didn't do an outline, if we didn't sit down and think about how would I answer this question, it's not going to go too well. It's a lot tougher to kind of fly by the seat of your pants than to have things planned out. You don't want to walk away from something feeling like, ooh, maybe I didn't make a great impression, or maybe I didn't get all the points out that I wanted to, just solely based off of you weren't prepared. And some additional insights and recommendations after going through this interview process with two participants. I could definitely talk about just being flexible and being prepared. Once again, that's kind of my thing, that was the biggest thing that I really learned out of this whole process, is to stay flexible. And things are going to happen that you don't expect, and we just have to be ready for it. Don't let it catch you off guard and be in a situation where you get all flustered and you feel like you can't think, or you feel like you can't accomplish anything just because your brain is every which way. So making sure that you are prepared and being okay with being flexible and being in new positions. And then just having the openness to talk to new people. It's really not as bad as it seems. We all just kind of, as a society, stick to our foundational people, our friends and our family that we've had forever, a long time. We've known our friends since high school, middle school, maybe even elementary school. But it's good to branch out. It's good to find new connections, and I really enjoy networking, and I just really enjoy learning about people and their experiences, because we can learn so much from individuals that we would never guess that you could learn something from them. So just constantly having that kind of curious mind about people, I think, is a good recommendation. And so share some recommendations for enhancing the process. I think that I would just maybe have a couple sets of questions that you can kind of pull from, and making sure you have extra questions. I know that came in handy for me, because when I was going through the process, it wasn't necessarily flowing great, right? You plan it out and it's going pretty well, and then you end up making this conversation out of a question that you had talked about. And so maybe the next question that you had planned worked well with the first one, but now that we've kind of gone on this conversation, it doesn't really apply. And so being able to kind of skip around and be like, oh, well, now that we're talking about this would be a really good question that I could pull in and make this a little bit more flowy and natural conversation, instead of stopping a conversation to be like, okay, my next question is. So having a smoother transition, I think, is easier when you have more questions available to you, and just applicable questions, making sure that they're not random, they're not simple. How was your day? Like, that's a given, we're going to talk to people, we'll have that small talk, but in an interview process, we definitely want to dive a little bit deeper. And so those were the 4 things that I wanted to cover in today's informative presentation, covering the interview process that we did for professional communications. And thank you so much for taking a listen here today, and I hope you learned something from my experience. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.